Episode 65. We see Tails put down something that instantly produces these artificial palm trees on the laneway of the spaceship. I'm glad it's explained they're artificial since it is on a spaceship. Tails explains that Chuck told him it's nice to make the crew feel like a home to keep up morale. I like that they cared enough to explain this. I did find these palm trees charming since they remind me of Tails' workshop laneway in SA1. Knuckles says he doesn't care about Rouge, and Chris says he's almost done and then says he's still sore. The beginning of this episode is so boring. Tails thinks the Metrics want to take over the galaxy, but how do they plan to do this when they're all about destroying planets? It seems self-destructive of them. They're not ruling over people then. One of the Metrics says that Red Pine's weakness was that he was too proud of his strength, as they discuss how their enemies beat them. If he's too proud of his strength, then why did he never physically attack Sonic himself and instead just sent armies of robots after him? None of these guys have any unique character. I giggled after the Metrics said that, and one of them says they're not fighting, just having a difference of opinion. So they're trying to have comedy around them. They're being self-aware of how silly this sounds. And the green guy plans on beating Sonic with the Emerald. They see on the main monitor that Vector's the one approaching them. And I like that Charmy was waving a white flag to show that no, they're not there to fight this time. It turns out they were lost in space, and Vector says that Charmy broke their transmitter, for no reason because forced comedy. So that's why they couldn't send Sonic an SOS. So sadly, the Chaotix are going to stay on the spaceship. And Charmy says he won't let Tails boss him around. And Tails lies that he won't fix their ship. Why the hell are the Chaotix in this show for more than 2 episodes? This is such a baffling marketing decision. Tails says Chris is finishing the Blue Typhoon for him, says he's too busy repairing Vector's ship. Vector says that the reason Tails doesn't want the Chaotix with him is that Tails has a crush on Cosmo and wants to be alone with her. This time Vector is right, and it's frustrating that he's not being portrayed as right. Tails clearly blushed twice because of Cosmo. Vector admits that he feels like a freeloader, at least being self-aware, and he wants to repay Tails by helping him win Cosmo's heart. So I think I know what's coming. I've heard about this. Charmy offers to play tag with Knuckles, and Knuckles somehow thinks he has more important things to do when he does nothing. Also, that sad expression there for a split second. Was he tempted to play tag with Charmy? Was he touched that Charmy was nice enough to even ask to play tag with him? I mean, since when does anyone treat him with respect, and since when does anyone in universe like him in this show? So maybe he appreciated it. I mean, Knuckles never looks sad. Knuckles almost never looks sad in this show, so if he does look sad, then it has to mean something. He looks sad a lot more in Sonic Underground. He gets teased into charging right into sleeping gas. Why didn't Charmy just knock him out instantly? SBO picks up and carries Knuckles, and actually giggled at how SBO was lying to Cosmo while carrying Knuckles, saying that Knuckles has joined the Metrics and the Metrics rule. You'd think it would be obvious what's going on from the start since SBO can turn invisible, and Knuckles is clearly being carried here, so the logic falls apart. What was Vector trying to accomplish making Cosmo think Knuckles is a traitor? Doesn't he realize how horribly wrong framing a main character could go? For no reason, we see that Bokoon is tall because of the black hole, but black hole spaghettify stuff. They would have been totally destroyed. This was the dumb joke. Rouge is told they were swallowed up by a gravity field and spit out in an unknown part of the galaxy. Shouldn't he know that Shadow warped them? Shouldn't he know that if they really went through a black hole, they would have been destroyed? Shadow just warped them. So why would Bokoon be tall? Tails bumps into Cosmo while she's carrying boxes in front of her face, and she somehow thinks it's her fault. Tails sees that Cosmo dropped something, a flower I think, and he runs after her. There's no way he'd be running without his tail spinning vertically behind him to go faster. I can't imagine a single fanfiction not writing that to be the case every time he's running. Even fanfiction is doing this better, but no, lazy animation. It's good that the show at least tries to have episodes of downtime. It'd be overwhelming if every episode was super tense and action-packed, especially since the Metrics are so overly grim as it is. But It's obvious that this is from Japan, because their idea of comedy is just making things weird and confusing. Vector grabs Tails under his arm and somehow doesn't think this will scare him, and he thinks about a plan to get Cosmo and Tails together by causing a blackout. And Vector starts laughing evilly, which naturally scares Tails. At least I'm smiling, but really, Vector should not be a horribly stupid idiot with a terrible voice. He wasn't like this in Fleetway, but his dialogue's better than Archie. SBO lampshades that Vector should probably let Tails' relationship develop naturally, but considering what's eventually coming, Vector might be justified in forcing this to happen faster, because if he didn't, Tails would never be that close to her because things would have progressed too slowly. But if he never got super close to her, he would have been spared a lot of heartbreak later. Who doesn't know the spoiler coming up at this point? After SBO drops a dirty hanky near Tails, which had Vector's name on it in the Japanese version, and I'm expected to think this is Vector's idea of making them grow closer, Tails and Cosmo say they're good friends, and Tails pushes Cosmo over to prevent a ball from landing on her. She falls over, and she blushes because he's sitting right in front of her. Cream has a horrible voice, so I can't blame the show for shipping Tails with someone other than her. Why does she think she's lucky Tails can fly when she showed she could fly the last time the Chaotix were around? Instead, she needs his flight to set up Disco Ball, when I was just about to say that her being able to fly with her skirt gives her something in common with Tails. Cream is way more about flight than her. At least Knuckles runs after Vector wanting revenge for the graffiti on his face. But sadly, we just see horribly budget freeze frames instead of actually seeing Knuckles' fists impact with the Chaotix. This is supposed to be cool? So much for revenge. Tails says that Cosmo wanted to throw them a surprise party, and Sonic says they don't need fancy decorations to have a good time, so they don't have to cancel the party like I was really confused about. It was amusing that Vector thought Cosmo likes Sonic now, and Sonic's mouth is gaping open because he's stunned at seeing Amy's dress. Then for no reason we see SBO and Charmy have stuff on their faces just for a joke. This is very out of character for SBO. He's supposed to be serious. Tails gives Cosmo the flower she dropped, and says he polished it up for her, explaining why it took so long. And she appreciates it. This is sweet. Why the fuck does this have to take so long? I wouldn't be so bored and frustrated with this whiny character who does nothing if she and him were having these sweet moments from the start. Though she's all about nature and he's about technology. Isn't that kind of incompatible since they're opposed to each other? Wouldn't she be wary of his focus on technology because of the metrics? And Tails clearly is about to call her beautiful, since he says, "you're," but somehow she agrees with him that the stars are beautiful, which is dumb. And suddenly that's the end of the episode. A whole lot of nothing happened. This was a downtime episode where Vector tries to get Tails to be with Cosmo to repay him for repairing a spaceship, which sadly got damaged off-screen because fuck good animation and priorities. I'm so pissed that these characters are going to be in every episode from now on. But at least they did make me smile and giggle when SBO used Knuckles as a puppet. I'm proud of Cosmo for not actually buying that Knuckles turned evil. There was no reason for them to graffiti his face in universe. Vector shouldn't be humiliated as a worthless, incompetent character all the time. Doesn't the games... It just makes me wonder why the Chaotix still hang out with him when I'm already questioning why they put up with Charmy. Their entire being a team is forced, so they don't work. That isn't a problem with Archie. Even Penders knew to give them a good team dynamic, instead of making them incompetent idiots who bicker every chance they get. In Archie, I could at least understand that they were friends and buy that they stick together because they made a good team. They fought bad guys pretty well. Charmy's at least interesting, but is annoying anyways. Vector is unbearable, and I really have to wonder why SBO is humiliating himself by humoring Vector like he's just as dumb as him, when he's the serious one who thinks his plans are stupid. On the one hand, at least Tails would get to enjoy sweet moments with Cosmo, but since she's not gonna be around for very long, Tails was better off being as distant from her as possible so he wouldn't get attached, and end up going through the rest of his life comparing every future girlfriend to her. It is sweet to see them like this, though. I wish this was the case for the whole season instead of taking this long. We've got the Antoine and Bunny scenario where them having sweet moments together makes me like the both of them better whenever it happens. And it takes a boring character and makes her enjoyable. I'm glad I can at least like her as Tails' girlfriend because he deserves to have a girlfriend for once. It's just clueless that they're giving him a girlfriend who isn't an engineering genius like him, so she's not as ideal girlfriend material as she could be. What would they talk about for hours on end aside from freedom fighting? All Cosmo would do is worry over and over. If Tails was shipped with Cream instead, which sounds like the obvious choice, Cream would get a lot more lines, and we'd have to be tortured with her grating, disturbing voice, and we get enough of that as it is. So we're better off just having her shipped with him in fanfiction, because there we don't have to deal with annoying voices. She does have more in common with him than Cosmo though, because at least they can both fly. But they wouldn't be able to have a lengthy conversation about science either.